Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of the Democratic View. I'm the hostess. My name is Phyllis Italiano, and with me today I have a guy who I've been seeing weekly because he's my teacher, and his name is Andrea Visconti, and he teaches our memoir class, and he's also a paisano, which is very nice to have. Welcome, Andrew. I would love to hear the story of you, how you got here, and why you chose to do what you're doing as well. But give us a little background.
Well, first of all, it's an honor to be here with you. I see you, yes, once a week for our class, but today we're sort of switching positions. You're going to be the one asking questions. Usually I am the one asking questions, so this is great. So where shall we start? Shall we start?
I'd like to know where you were born and raised.
I was born and raised in Milan. And for a lot of people, I know that a lot of people have been to Milan. Have you been to
Of
Milan?
course.
Of course. What do you think? Did you like it?
Yes, well, it's different. It's not my favorite place in Italy, and I've been to Italy 12 times.
Exactly. You're right. It's not your favorite place. It's not anyone's favorite place. Most people don't think that it's their favorite place because Italy has so many beautiful, beautiful places to go to. Milan, to me, is sort of Italy's answer to New York.
That's right.
It's a fast-paced city. People work hard. They make money. Unlike New York, they don't talk about the money they make. That's the big difference. But, you know, and come the weekend, they're gone. People in New York come to East Hampton or go to the Hamptons in general. People in Italy, in Milan, they go to the Riviera. They go to Portofino. They go to Santa Margherita. They go to that crescent of a region that is sort of the continuation of the French Riviera. And that region is called Liguria. And it's full of gorgeous places. If you haven't been,
I have.
We'll meet there, okay? So that's where I'm from. I'm from Milan.
And so you were born and raised and went to school in Milan?
I was born and raised in Milan, and I went to school. My elementary school was called Elementare Ruffini, and it was literally, Phyllis, literally the building next to Leonardo's Last Supper.
Oh my God.
Absolutely. We left our apartment, just crossed like 3 streets. We got to this beautiful basilica called Santa Maria delle Grazie. I want to ask you to repeat it. And
I could.
the refectory right next to Santa Maria delle Grazie is the Cenacolo, which is the building where Leonardo's Last Supper is. So every day of my elementary school life,
God,
I went past one of the most magnificent and celebrated buildings in the world, I would say.
Yes.
Now, was I really aware of what was in there? I don't know. I can't tell you. That was a number of years ago. I can't remember how much I knew about the Cenacolo and about Leonardo's Last Supper. But that's where I went to school. And then I went to school. I went to the international school there, which is the reason why I speak English, because I grew up bilingual.
Oh, really?
Yes, yes. Hopefully my Italian is flawless, hopefully. It better be flawless, being that I was a journalist for most of my life. But I truly grew up bilingual thanks to a father who was a true visionary, Phyllis, because maybe nowadays the idea of raising children bilingual, maybe it's not as much a novelty as it was, 50 years ago. It was very different back then. But my father wanted his children, my brother, my sister, and me, to be bilingual. At home, Phyllis, we were not allowed to speak Italian. We could speak Italian.
God.
Once we left the apartment, we were fine. We could speak Italian. At home, we had to speak English.
Oh my
And I will always
God.
remember, this is sort of a funny little story. We would have dinner together, and I still remember that if I wanted water, I could not say, mi passi l'acqua per favore, because nobody would respond to that. I would have to go, okay, may I have some water, please? And then water would come my way. And when you're a child that age, you don't even know what a foreign language is.
Yes.
You just know that if you use a bunch of words, people respond. If you use another bunch of words, people don't respond. It's as simple as that. So it's a very utilitarian kind of thing. And for me, it was like, I want water. I don't care what I have to call it. You want me to call it water, not aqua? Fine, I'll call it aqua water. But that's how one becomes truly bilingual. I cannot tell you which one is my primary language, whether it's Italian or English. For me, they're like absolutely in par, the two of them.
Well, being a member of your class, I can tell you that I have never, and I'm an old English teacher as well as science teacher and history teacher, I have never heard you use English wrong. Never.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, once in a great while, something in spelling I have seen, but never in the use of the language.
Right.
Your English is really quite extraordinary.
Wow. Thank you. You
So
just
what
made
did
my
you-
day.
So what did you do with this great capacity that you had?
Well, that's a very good question because I always wanted to be a journalist. You know how children maybe age 11, 12, 13, adults say, so what do you want to do when you grow up? And very often they give the standard answer. I want to be a policeman. I want to be a fireman. I want to be an astronaut. And I would just say, I want to be a journalist. And people would just look at me and say, journalist? It was just sort of such an adult answer. And I am one of those lucky few fellows who actually ended up doing what they were hoping they would do. I was a journalist for my entire life.
Really?
Yeah. So this new chapter of being of having my classes in memoir writing, that's truly a new chapter because until very, very recently, I was working full time as a journalist.
When you say you were working as a journalist, you mean for newspapers?
Yes, I was using my Italian language for my work, not English. And I was, for a very long time, I was a New York-based correspondent for a news organization in Italy called La Repubblica. La Repubblica would be a little bit like the New York Times of Italy.
I know it. I've heard of it, yes.
And La Repubblica has different platforms. They also have a news magazine called L'Espresso. They have a radio network. They have television operations. And I was floating for a long time. I was just doing strictly print. But when the print medium started becoming obsolete, that's when I really was interested in discovering what the other platforms were all about. Mm-hmm. And I loved doing podcasts, loved the radio. Oh, so much fun to do the radio. Television is it's challenging because when you're live, you can't say anything wrong because you're live.
Absolutely.
There's no rolling back the tape. But for some reason, television got me less excited than the radio. The radio is really in my heart.
Really?
Absolutely love the radio. I did a show in Italy from New York. It was a show about New York, broadcast in Italy every Sunday morning at 11 o'clock in the morning, Italian time. And let's remind the viewers, 11 o'clock in the morning in Italy, it's 5 o'clock here, which means that every Sunday morning for a number of years, I got up at 4:45. Yes. And at 5 o'clock, you're on the air. So yeah, that's what. But you were asking, what did I do with my bilingual knowledge? Well, that's how I got into journalism. In journalism, they say that you have to know someone, at least to just give you a little nudge forward. In my case, I was lucky enough that being bilingual, I found a magazine that needed me. They needed someone who could actually read the English media, especially American media, and sort of find stories that we could develop, with our own spin or whatever. So I would spend hours just reading American newspapers and magazines and then reporting back to the editors. That's how I got into journalism. So thank you, Dad. Thank you to my father, who actually was the visionary who gave me the tremendous asset of two languages.
And not just two languages. I mean, a lot of people can claim two languages, but you have to do the two languages correctly. And I'm having studied Italian in my high school and once in college. It's not an easy language. It's a little complicated.
It is.
Yeah. And
most verbs are irregular verbs.
oh gosh, that's a
But
long
I'm envious of someone like you who studied Italian, because you probably have an appreciation of the Italian language that I don't have. I grew up with the Italian language. I cannot hear the musicality of it.
Oh my God, it's such a beautiful language. Io mi chiamo Phyllis Italiano. Come on.
You have a wonderful accent.
It's like
My God,
music.
she really has a great accent.
I mean, I wish my name was Phyllis Italiano instead of Phyllis Italiano. But
So you grew up with Italian spoken in the neighborhood, or?
no, I grew up in what we didn't even call ourselves Italian Americans. In the East Bronx, where I grew up, we were just Italians. And there were mostly Italians in my neighborhood. And some of the people spoke a little, parents spoke Italian when they didn't want you to know what they were saying. So it was like, I remember when I went to Christopher Columbus High School, they said, why do you want to take Italian? I said, I want to know the secrets, because they would talk to each other, but they didn't speak very good Italian. They spoke the dialect.
Well, I wouldn't say that.
Yeah, well, I agree.
The dialect is actually a language.
Yes.
So they spoke their language, which probably, I presume it was what, Neapolitan?
Neapolitan.
In fact, we can say that most Italians are bilingual and have been bilingual for generations, because they had to speak their dialect and speak Italian. And for the viewers who don't know this, those are two completely different languages.
Yes, they are.
With their own rules, grammar rules, words. So it's not just a matter of pronunciation. Yes, sure, some words maybe they're just pronounced a little differently, but that's not what makes a dialect. A dialect has a complete set of rules and of words.
Right. It does. You're right.
Okay, can I give you one example that I kind of enjoy? The word for chair in proper Italian is sedia or seggiola. There's two different words, but let's say that most people would say sedia.
That's S-E-D-I-A.
S-E-D-I-A, exactly. I mentioned earlier that a lot of Milanese spend weekends on that crescent of a region, the continuation of the French Riviera. In that region, the word for chair, for sedia, is cadrega.
Oh, wow.
Nothing to do with it. But get this, in Brazil, in Portuguese, it's carrega. The same word is more similar between Portuguese and that particular dialect of Italy than with proper standard national Italian.
Now, where do you think the correct Italian is spoken?
Good question. They say that the correct language is actually spoken in Tuscany. They say that even a simple person in Tuscany would use the verbs beautifully, would use every adverb and adjective the proper way. In fact, I can tell you that even though Milan has the reputation, more than the reputation, the reality of being the wealthiest city in Italy, we make a very common mistake in Milan. we never use the past tense. For example, when we say, I went to the beach, we say, I have gone to the beach. We never use that sense of we call it the remote past tense. It's never used. So it's improper Italian. And yet, that's the way people speak in the wealthiest city in Italy.
So tell me, how did you get here?
By plane.
Oh, well, I know that. I'm sure you didn't swim.
How did I get here?
Yeah,
Well,
how did you get into America, the United States?
Oh, this is actually, I hope we have enough time because it's a cute little story.
Okay, try it.
I tried. Okay, you tell me when
Yeah.
you're bored. So I was working for a magazine in Italy at one point over Christmas. I got the opportunity to go to Central America, not with the magazine, with a different magazine that had given me the opportunity to do a travel story from a country that back then was, they were not sure whether it would become a new tourist destination or whether it would become a country ravaged by civil war. That was Nicaragua. I was fascinated, and I said, oh my God, I want to go. It's so fascinating. So I went to my managing editor and I said, I am going on a trip, on a very important trip, and we leave on Christmas Day, and I'm going to be back on January 8th. And he said, no, you have to be back with everyone else on January 3rd. And I said, but you don't understand. This is an opportunity. Nicaragua, this is amazing. I said, nope, you have to be back with everybody else on January 3rd. And I said, you know what? If you think that this is not important enough for me, I was a young cub reporter, this is not the right magazine for me. And he said, what do you mean? We were good friends. He said, what do you mean? I said, I mean that on December 23rd, when we close the office for Christmas, it's going to be my last day. And he said, you're kidding, right? And I said, I don't know. Let's see if I'm kidding. We'll see what happens on the 23rd. And sure enough, on the 23rd of December, I went around, said goodbye to all of my colleagues. On Christmas Day, I boarded a plane, flew to Costa Rica, and from Costa Rica, we took a bus into Managua. And on the way back...
The capital of Nicaragua.
Yes, thank you. Managua, capital of Nicaragua. Thank you, teacher. And on the way back, the plane stopped in New York. I got off the plane, and I never went back. I mean, I went back.
Andrew, that really is a story.
I went back many times, but I never went back in the sense that I made New York my home.
That's amazing. You mean you came to New York, Manhattan?
Yeah. Okay. Oh, no. Okay. I have another. This is really funny. Get this. Okay. So the ticket was from San Jose in Costa Rica to Amsterdam and then on to Milan via New York. I got off the plane in New York, but I still had the voucher from New York to Amsterdam and then to Milan. Well, back then, Phyllis, I was able to sell that return part of the ticket because I went to the airport. I hope immigration is not listening to this show. I went to immigration to the airport with this other person, a guy I'd never met before, an Italian guy. And I did the check-in. I gave him the boarding pass. He gave me some money. He flew to Italy, and there I was, stuck in New York with no return ticket and a little bit of money to survive on.
Wow, that takes real guts.
That's
New York is not that easy a place to maneuver.
True. But I have to tell you, yes, it's not easy. But for someone coming from Milan, it is similar. You're used to that pace.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
You know, someone who grows up in Nebraska, in I don't know, in Kansas,
yes,
they come to New York and probably they're a lot more intimidated,
right,
than someone growing up in a big city like Milan. Yes. Granted, New York has 8.4 million people. Milan has 2.5. But still,
I know exactly, having been to both of those cities a lot. I know that they are not so dissimilar. So how did you get a job?
Um, I started freelancing for Italian magazines and newspapers back then. And we're talking about the early 80s, the mid 80s. In the mid 80s, there was a tremendous hunger and thirst for anything American. You would call them and say, I want to write about these flowers. And they said, yes, please, yes. New York flowers, we want to hear about them. It was really fascinating. Any new book that came out, any movie, anything was something that they really wanted to hear
They,
about.
the Italians.
They, the Italians. So, and up to a certain point, it hasn't changed all that much. There is still a tremendous fascination, not so much for everything American, but everything New York. Italians love New York.
How about Long Island? Have they ever heard of Long Island?
Through me sometimes, yes. But sometimes they heard about the Hamptons. Maybe they don't know much about what's in between. So maybe we should give them an opportunity to learn more about it.
Yes, well, actually, believe it or not, part of Long Island is Queens. You know, geographically.
So it is New York City.
Yeah.
Yes.
So.
And that's something that I have done, and I have to say, I'm proud that I've been doing this for years. For me, New York is not just Manhattan. A lot of journalists, especially foreign journalists, always Manhattan, Manhattan, Manhattan. I get on that ferry and I go to Staten Island. I go to Brooklyn, I go to Queens, I love Queens, and I like to write stories about the outer boroughs, because I really feel that otherwise Italians get the wrong
Have you ever been
impression.
to the Bronx?
I've been to the Bronx.
Oh, I was
That's
born and
another.
raised.
Can I tell you?
Yeah.
Can I tell you? That's interesting. Have you ever heard of HOPE? HOPE as an abbreviation, HOPE. HOPE is a program that the city of New York has every last week in January when it's really cold. HOPE is the program to go out and count the homeless of New York City. And it is done through an army of volunteers who are given a very specific map. You're supposed to count the homeless on one side of the street, not on the other sidewalk, for example. And you have a specific route you have to follow so that you try not to double count. Well, as a journalist, I was curious about that. So one night I spent 4 hours in the dead of winter in the Bronx, in Knightsbridge, is that the neighborhood? Knightsbridge, counting the homeless.
Really?
It was not the only time I went to the Bronx, but it was a memorable time. Memorable time.
Well, I'm from what's called the East Bronx.
Will you take me there sometime?
Sure.
We'll go. Yes.
Actually, you know what? I did drive back there one time, not too long ago. Actually went to my church and to my apartment house where we lived, you know, because there are a lot of apartment houses. Ours was a very small apartment house, and it was a very small neighborhood too. But it was really, we didn't call ourselves Italian Americans, we called ourselves Italians. And we, you know, lived and thought we were Italian, you know, in that neighborhood.
What if sometime we get in the car, we go, we take my camera, and we tape the show? We take you back in the Bronx.
That would be absolutely terrific. Well, how did you get into the memoir thing and all of that stuff that you're doing now? Because you are doing some teaching now.
Yes, the memoir, it sounds like a departure from what I was doing, but it is not. Memoir writing is really journalism applied to the self. You have all the rules of journalism. You have the who, what, when, where, and how, exactly the same. But usually, as a journalist, you're a fly on the wall and you're observing and reporting what other people are doing, saying. In this case, you are part of the story, which is terrifying for a journalist. The first time you use the pronoun I applied to yourself, it's like, no, 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 no. That's the number one rule, Phyllis, that you learn in journalism school. You never write about yourself.
Right.
Even though now things are changing, and for some of the viewers who read newspaper, maybe the New York Times or so, now more journalists tend to use the I and inject themselves into the story. But for the longest time, no. So memoir is a fascinating discovery for me, and I'll be happy to tell you more some other time.
I was going to say, and on that note, sir, I will see you next Tuesday, and thank you very much for coming and letting us get to know you a little bit better.
Thank you for having me.
And I will certainly tell all of our class members to watch the show when it goes on. Don't worry, you do a very good job.
Thank you
so much for coming. We're going to shake hands even though it's a pandemic. Take care, and I'll see you Tuesday.
Absolutely.
Thanks
Thank
a
you.
lot. I really appreciate getting to know you a little bit. It was fun.
And vice versa.